Oh, I'm on. Hey, everybody. Somebody post something in the chat. It's been a rubber. Oh boy, he says. So here I am. Look at the rim light. Look at my hair glowing. Isn't it awesome? Usually you just see whatever I'm drawing on the Cintiq, but here I am at the TV station. So give me something to respond to and I'll jabber. Tonight will be truncated. There was a scheduling issue, but we're just getting things worked. Look at this, multiple cameras. Damn. It's like high tech. Production value, but not in the tape heads. Everybody see tape heads? Probably not. Colin, you seen tape heads? Movie? No, never heard it. Anyway, production value, TNA. There'll be none in this live stream, sadly. But, well, not sadly. I can't even say that. So anyway, Bitcoin, 56,000 today. I sold the last of my Bitcoin when it was around 900 to buy a pickup truck that was perpetually broken down, and I ended up selling for $300. So, Bitcoin, wish I'd kept mine. All right, anybody going to join me in the what do you call it? Zoom call. Info is in the top of the chat. Hikane, how much do you have to pay for such beautiful streaming? Oh my God, it costs so much money. Fortunately, I don't pay it. I'm here at Fact TV, Falls Area Community Television, and this is a community TV station. And if you want to do a show, you can come on in, and they'll let anybody in here. They let me in here. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this setup. So what are we going to talk about? Warm form for ya, KMO. I don't know what that means, Ben Rubber, but there's an exclamation point, so I know that you mean it emphatically. All right. So what are we doing? What's the topic? I don't have anything at the ready to read. I figured somebody would suggest something. I'm a little surprised that our man Ed from Montreal is not here. He's one of the folks I most expected to see. All right. Well, I guess I could just tell you a story. Yesterday, I needed to go to the store, grocery store. And I asked Alexa, what's the temperature? She said it's 38 degrees Fahrenheit, which for around here is a heat wave. It's amazing. Edgar Allan Poe is better than modern rappers. Okay, you know I like Edgar Allan Poe. He kind of. So I'm walking. Well, I hear that it's 38 degrees, but I'm so distrustful. The last 12 months have been so just obnoxious in every regard. And this winter has been so brutal and so nasty and just so, makes me want to move. And I didn't trust it. I knew that, I put on I had a t-shirt on, I put on a long sleeve thing under it, and then I put on my heavy coat over it, which I knew was too much. And then I wore a backpack over that as well. And I walked to the store, and by the time I got to the store, I was sweating. So I did my shopping, I got out, and I couldn't wear the coat. I had to take it off, carried my coat home. And then I'm walking along and I see water, like all of this. It's not very appealing water because it's got this weird film on it. But, the snow is melting. It's washing over the sidewalks which have been salted all winter long, but haven't seen liquid water in many months. And it's pretty nasty looking. But at the same time, this idea for a video came to me. Liquid water confirmed on third planet, which is ours. Or liquid water found on Earth. So I squatted down with my, my handy dandy Huawei Mate SE phone, which I love, not complaining about the phone, but because it was bright sunlight, I couldn't see what was on the screen. But, I framed up this beautiful flow of water coming down somebody's driveway. There's all this, oily gunk in it, so you can really see the flow of the water. And I just sat on it. I held on that image for a while, thinking, okay, I'm going to take this image of the water and I'm going to narrate over it for a video. And then at the end, after like 30 seconds of that, then I sort of lifted it up and I, brought the camera up so I could look down the sidewalk and see, the melting snow and the big puddles and the bright sun and the blue sky. And then I thought, today, okay, I'm going to do that video. So I call up that video file, and of course the camera wasn't pointed that way. It was pointed at me. So it's 30 seconds of me like squatting down and, holding out the phone, and it's just my face looking serious, like I'm a cinematographer, but I was taking a selfie video. That's my story. So Samantha McGrath says, greetings from Tasmania, KMO. You just popped up in my notifications. Wild. I wonder why. I just kind of went through a little divorce from YouTube as a user. Yesterday, I discovered it started for the first time. Any video that starts with a commercial, it's just a blank screen, indefinite blank screen on my my Roku TV. So I, looked in the forums and I found the approved method for fixing this, and of course it didn't fix it. So I just logged out. I thought, well, what if I log out? And I did. Actually, what I did was I removed the channel and I reinstalled it, and so then I wasn't logged in. And I just tried playing a video and it worked. And then I logged in and I tried playing the video and the problem came back. So people with Roku TV who are having this problem, because I know there are many thousands of you out there and you're furious, just log out. What's the difference? Well, the difference is you're just some guy or just some gal to Google and YouTube, and it doesn't know you intimately. But you know what? Google figures out pretty quickly what it is you want to watch, even if you're not logged in. So pretty soon it's going to look the same anyway. And, maybe you really want Google to have ready access to your every move. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, because, the better they know you, the better they can serve things to you. But if that's your problem, this is the solution. Log out. You can still watch YouTube. You just don't have to tell them who you are and what you want. You might have to type in a few searches. So it goes. I've got the voice-activated remote. Downtown Out says, KMO, what are your thoughts, the fate of Western nations in the next decade? Are there any social or economic trends that specifically concern you? The ongoing destruction of the middle class concerns me. The ongoing, the widening gap between wealth and poor, these concern me. I don't think they're going to come to any cataclysmic head. I think it's just going to get slowly worse. It's, I don't know if Nicole Foss coined this term or if I coined it, but it's the sucky collapse. The fast collapse, it's the Mad Max thing where, One day we're all just going to work or not, if it's COVID, but we're sitting at our laptops and we're doing our work. And then the next day we're riding around on motorcycles, with mohawks, and we're killing people for gasoline. That's the fast collapse, and that's the romantic, exciting collapse. That's the zombie apocalypse. The sucky collapse is where things just get a little bit worse. Every year, things are just a little shittier than they were the year before. And I think that's where we're going. I'm listening to the audiobook right now of The New Map by Daniel Yergin, and it's all about geopolitics and energy and trade and whatnot. And I've just finished the section on China. And if you listen to Peter Zion, who's a geopolitical analyst that I like to pay attention to, he says, all the U.S. has to do to destroy China is just leave Asia, and China will do it all on its own. And I think Daniel Yergin, he's not really polemical in the book so far. If he has a really strong point he wants to make, he hasn't made it yet. And I'm only about, a little more than halfway through the book. But his presentation shows China as this really strong, rising power. And he was talking about their Belt and Road Initiative and how we in the West don't really understand it. But I was just watching I think it was a Bloomberg story on YouTube about the Belt and Road Initiative and about a city in Pakistan, a coastal city. What is it called? It's not, the word that's coming to mind is Gawar, but that's a big oil field in Saudi Arabia. But it's something like that, Garar or something. It sounds like growling. And China has thrown tons of money into getting this port developed. So if need be, they can skip the Strait of Malacca, which is this tiny little strip of land between Malaysia and Indonesia. It's right where Singapore is. And if you're getting your oil from the Middle East, which China, most of its oil does come from the Middle East, and you're bringing it by sea, well, you got to go through the Strait of Malacca. And if the powers there don't want your ships going through, they won't. So China would really love to be able to pull up to this coastal city in Pakistan and throw their stuff on a train. And they've built this huge, long, rail network, which goes over, I think, the Himalayas. It crosses the highest elevated land border in the world. But for some reason, the port just, it doesn't matter how much money China throws at this project, they can't seem to get this port going. What does that portend for the future? Is this just a rough start? They're going to get it going? I don't know. So, you've heard of the G20, right? The biggest 20 economic powers in the world. And then there's the G8. That's the more select group. Well, Daniel Yergin talks about the G2, which is basically just the U.S. and China. Those are the two biggest powers. And it wasn't Yergin. Some other author has written a book about China and the U.S., and he invokes the idea of the Thucydides trap. So the Thucydides trap describes the interaction between a rising power and the old hegemon. And, in this formulation, it was talking about Sparta and Athens. And Sparta was the old power, Athens was the rising power. And the rising power and the old power, it's like they can't help it. They've got to clash. And so the question is, can the U.S. and China, the U.S. used to be the global hegemon, and to some extent it still is, but it's really, the American people are done with it. We're done with it. We've elected the last 3 presidents on the promise that we're going to get out of these forever wars, and we never do. But the U.S. has been withdrawing its troops from its many, many overseas bases. It is withdrawing its commitments, to NATO, to the European Union, and we're really, pulling in, and we're creating a smaller family of just North America, Canada, U.S., Mexico, and then our best buds, over on the other side of the Pacific Rim, South Korea, Japan. And, if the U.K. wants to come along, they can. They've kind of demurred so far, but that's going to be the new U.S. imperial sphere, with the Five Eyes as well, Australia, New Zealand, they'll be on board. Oh, and Australia. China and Australia, economically, they're inseparable. China needs all the minerals that Australia can pull out of the ground to build stuff in China. But relations between Australia and China are in the toilet. How can that be? China has stopped buying like wine and mutton and beef and barley and things like that from Australia, but they still have to buy all the raw iron ore that the Australians can pull out of the ground. But there was a swimmer. I think he's an Olympic swimmer. I think he's Olympic level, Australian. And he criticized a Chinese competitor of his, a Chinese swimmer, who had been busted for illegal drug use, performance enhancing drug use. And he criticized him. And the Chinese state has sicked its dogs on the mother and father of this swimmer. So that, the mom goes outside to hang her laundry and she looks up and there's a drone hovering over, with the camera pointed down at her. Or they're trying to sleep at night and there's people at their back fence, banging on pots and pans and making lots of noise. People dumped broken glass into their swimming pool. They dumped quick setting cement into the filter of their swimming pool. I mean, the Chinese government is inducing people, clearly people who are in Australia, probably Chinese people or people that they have leverage over, to make these people's lives miserable because their son correctly pointed out that a Chinese athlete, was using banned performance enhancing drugs. So China is getting, I don't want to say uppity, but increasingly bold. They're feeling powerful, and will there be a conflict? I mean, this again is Peter Zeihan. China's navy was built for the express purpose of invading Taiwan, and forcibly returning Taiwan to the fold. And so far, the U.S. has been pretty committed to not letting that happen. If China launches an invasion of Taiwan, will the U.S. go to war over that? I'm not even sure if I don't know what I even want in that scenario. Do I want the U.S. to just stand back and throw its hands up and say, that's too much for us. Sorry, Taiwan. It's nice while it lasted. Enjoy your new role. Or do I want the U.S. to stand up and say, no, Taiwan has been a longtime ally of ours, even though we don't recognize them officially as a country. We give them as many weapons as they want to buy. No, well, this is where we draw the line. That's what concerns me, I would say. The rising conflict between China and the U.S., the increasing deterioration of, normal people, as Andrew Yang would say, the plight of the formerly working class, the former middle class, and now the precariat, and, the rise, as Shoshona Zuboff would say, of surveillance capitalism, And this is all so very ironic. I love this phone. This is a Huawei Mate SE. The U.S. government and Google are basically, at war with Huawei. Huawei can make Android phones, but you can't get the Google Play Store on it. You can't get Gmail, can't get Google Maps. And, as much as I'm expressing all this concern about China, I really want that Google ban to be lifted because I want my next phone to be a Huawei phone because they're great phones. I mean, they're amazing hardware. And because they're so unattractive in the US, because they're not really compatible with all those Google services, the US manufacturers, and there are no US manufacturers, they're all made in China. But, Samsung and Apple and, Google itself with its Pixel line, they don't actually have to stand up and compete against the superior products from Huawei because Americans can't really get their hands on those Huawei phones very easily, and the phones are crippled. So as much as I'm concerned about surveillance capitalism, as much as I'm concerned about the abuses of the Chinese Communist Party, as much as I'm concerned about the tensions between the U.S. and China, I want that ban lifted because I want a new Huawei phone. Or, a Google Pixel 5a when it comes out. It's probably going to be pretty attractive. All right, Oswald Spengler says, Athens versus Sparta on the geopolitical front, Athens versus Jerusalem on the cultural front. Oswald Spengler, I would need for you to elaborate on that before I could say anything about it, really. Athens versus Jerusalem. Parker, hey Parker. Parker says, your channel is basically sponsored by the Huawei Mate SE, except they don't give me any money. And I've been thinking about this. I mean, if I had some opportunity to go to China, on somebody else's dime, I don't know if I would. I seriously, they treat their own people so badly. I've seen how the, people, the 50 Cent Army, if you will, have treated YouTubers like Serpent ZA and Sea Milk. Anybody who says anything remotely critical of China, the heat seems to come down on them. Now, they'd have to be really motivated to come and find me here in rural Vermont, to make my life miserable. But I wouldn't voluntarily place myself within easy reach of the CCP, I don't think. And I know lots of people watching this probably have been to China, plan to go to China in the future, think I'm being hyperbolic. Maybe so. Maybe my concern is unjustified or overblown. But if so, what have I lost? We only live so long. Travel is expensive. And most places in the world are places I will never see. Right now, I'm much more attracted to Mexico. And Mexico has the advantage of being right here, right next to the U.S. And you can drive there if you want to. So I know Mexico has its problems, drug cartels, people getting robbed, people getting killed. But I watch lots of videos by expats and digital nomads, and I've been watching a lot about Mexico recently. And the thing I hear over and over again is, yeah, there are dangerous places in Mexico, but there are dangerous places in the U.S. Do you go to East St. Louis? Do you go to the south side of Chicago? People know to avoid these places. Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, listen to the people who've been there longer and know what's what, and take their advice, and you'll be fine, most likely. But on that note, ain't nobody getting out of here alive. So we all will be checking out at some point. Oswald Spengler elaborates. Athens versus Jerusalem was coined by Leo Strauss back in the 50s to describe the war of thought control versus free thinking, and has been kept alive as a concept by Gilad Atzmon, who published and disowned. Who was published and disowned by Zero Books. Really? That is a Zero Books drama that I was unaware of. Zero Books, by the way, the publisher there, or the guy in charge, is Douglas Lane, somebody I've known for many years. We've done many podcasts together. But he's a very busy man now, so I don't talk to him nearly as often as I used to. But I was not aware of that drama at Zero Books. Yeah. Other things came to mind that Doug has told me about behind the scenes at Zero Books, but that's not really my place. So, Gilad is a self-described self-hating Jew. You can guess why they disowned him. Yeah. Doug walks a thin line. He appeals to a dangerous audience. He has their attention, he has their clicks and their views. But yeah, they're out for blood. They're a bloodthirsty lot, and I think maybe Doug's probably in a position, he's probably cancel-proof. I don't think that they can apply pressure and get him fired, but why risk it with that crowd? I'm much happier to have a smaller but less volatile and less bloodthirsty audience. Alrighty. Oh, who dis? Parker writes, and everybody at the top of the chat, there is a Zoom call login info. You are welcome to join me by Zoom. In fact, I'd like it if somebody would try so we can just test the system. But Parker says, I watched a channel about caving, and there was a video about a caving trip to Mexico. The locals in the area insisted on a chicken sacrifice for luck to help the caving expedition. Yeah, and weren't there these subterranean humanoids that only came to the surface at night to hunt, and a bunch of women went into that cave, or was that a movie? That was The Descent. All right. Oswald Spengler continues, the Gilad controversy might have happened before Doug's time, I'm not sure. Okay. In which case, I would not have heard of it, because I had no interest in Zero Books before Doug started with them. I am not a leftist. I have sympathy for people who, who bristle at abuses of power. I'm sure there are lots of places where my sentiments and ideas and ideological commitments, such as they are, could connect to the left, but I really hate the whole, twisting of language, and this is not my original thought. But if you're going to craft a worldview that is supposed to liberate everybody, why couch it in language that only a tiny fraction of the population can understand? I mean, I'm not an uneducated rube. I have a college degree. I don't have a master's degree, but I have the coursework for a master's degree. I just never defended my thesis. I'm not the unwashed masses, I'm not the lumpen prole here, but I have no idea what people are talking about when they go off in their critical theory lingo. I'm just not my deal, not my thing, don't care for it. So getting back to Oswald Spengler and thought control versus free thinking. So definitely China and the Chinese Communist Party, they are, much more aggressive in their thought control practices than is the U.S. government. But it's not so much the U.S. government that is, the spearhead of thought control in the U.S. It's private interests, it's the universities, it's the tech companies, it's Wall Street, it's the major media firms. It's what Joel Kotkin calls the clerisy. These are the people whose job it is to articulate the viewpoint of the powerful to the masses so that the masses accept it. And right now, it seems like, you can get fired for saying something indelicate and offending somebody's opinions or their identities, regarding gender identity or race or gender and race are the big ones, or, trans something or another. But to me, this is all just, all of the fury that goes into focusing so exclusively on these topics is to the exclusion of economic class. It is to the exclusion of the plight of the precariat, of people who, the faster things change, and things are changing quickly right now because of technology, among other things. But the faster things change, the more opportunity there are for power grabs, the more opportunity there is to solidify power and wealth, concentrate wealth at the top. And we trade the sorts of 20th century jobs where, people could join unions, they got breaks, they got to go on vacation, they had medical benefits, and we're trading that for the gig economy. And that happens when old job sectors are suddenly rendered obsolete by new technology. And that's not an accident. It didn't just happen that way. So I guess I'm going back to the very first question that I got asked was, geopolitical and other trends, what concerns me? That concerns me. What was that? Anyway, here's my, I don't want to say unpopular opinion because I think it is a very popular opinion, but it is unpalatable to the folks at the top. And, this could cost me my channel, but I'll say it. I think the coronavirus pandemic response is bullshit. I think it would have been so much better if we had done nothing at all. Yes, I know somebody will get really morally offended at that, but Granny could die. My mom is 80, and a family member, I won't say who, but a family member who lives in New York City at the very start of the pandemic panicked and threw her family in the car and drove to my mother's house in Arkansas and moved in. Like, you've just gone from, one of the most dense concentrations of coronavirus in the U.S. at this moment, and you've taken it to my 80-year-old mother's house. Had my mother died, I would have been furious. But she didn't catch it. And, there was that cruise ship. And the people on the cruise ship were held there in Japan. I forget how many weeks they were held, but they couldn't get off the ship, and they all most everybody got infected because the design of the ventilation on the ship just circulates the air to everybody. It's a horrible way to try to isolate people from one another in terms of passing a virus. There's like 3,000 people on the ship who got COVID. 14 died. I asked Alexa earlier today, what is 14 divided by 3,700, or whatever the total number of passengers that were infected was. It was way, way less than 1%. I mean, the damage that has been inflicted on working people, working families, young people, people who should be getting into their first career or who should be away at school or, who should be doing stuff in the world are sitting at home in front of their screens, basically just atrophying. Taking the dynamism of youth and the plasticity of their young minds, and it's being molded to sit in a chair and stare at a computer screen. The damage, the fallout from this is going to ripple through the economy. It's going to ripple through the population for decades. And, I'm not a conspiracy monger. I'm not going to say this was all intended for this explicit purpose, but from my perspective, if there had been just no response whatsoever, if there had been no mention of it in the news, I've said other places on a stream yesterday, I don't think most people would have noticed. And somebody, wrote back and said, well, I know so a lot of nurses around here, and intensive care nurses would certainly have noticed. Like, yeah, okay, they probably would have. But if it wasn't on the news, it wouldn't cause a panic. And I live in a place where old people, old hippies, they love to be so disparaging and disapproving about people not, doing exactly perfect mask protocol. I was walking to the store a couple months ago. It was bitterly cold, and I'm dressed appropriately, gloves, hat, heavy coat, walking down the street. There's a stiff wind blowing, making it even colder. And I'm not wearing a mask. Why would I? I'm outdoors, walking in the wind. And a woman is walking toward me on the sidewalk, older woman. She's not appropriately dressed. She's wearing like a hoodie, and it's not even zipped up, no gloves, no hat, but she's got a mask on. And we're about to pass on the sidewalk. We're like 20 feet from each other, and she ostentatiously stops and turns and steps off the sidewalk into the street, not looking to see if there was a car coming that would have run her down, and gave me a wide berth and a nasty look, as we passed each other. And I'm like, lady, I didn't say this to her, of course. I just kept walking, but I thought, take that mask off your face and put it over the top of your head and conserve a little bit of body heat, because it is freaking cold out here. Anyway, Ben Rubber says, I also don't see how the Zoom info, I don't see the Zoom info in the chat. Can you paste it in? All right, hold on. There it is. It's in the chat. Alrighty, so Downton Out. Am I saying that right? Is that like Downton Abbey, but Downton Out? Speaking of zero books, do you have an opinion on the cultural left? Yeah, I just said it. And I'm in my 30s, constantly surrounded by peers who subscribe to this. What's in it for them? I mean, what's their financial situation? Are they doing well? I mean, if you're doing well, it's a very attractive position, because it demonizes anybody who would want to, talk about the distribution of wealth. Is it a flash in the pan or a sign of deeper issues? Well, the academic trends that gave rise to it were decades in the making. But now it's really mainstream. It serves the interests of the powerful, particularly, the surveillance capital is powerful. Will it last? I don't think so. I don't think most people have much tolerance for it, really. But, what do I know? I live in a little village of like 2,500 people in rural Vermont. I don't see that many people. And, because of the filter bubble effect, we tend to surround ourselves with people online who share our opinions. And, even without trying, that's like the default position. If you don't make any effort to expose yourself to viewpoints that you disagree with, they won't force themselves on you, because, why would they? Except social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. The algorithms have discovered that, yeah, you can get people to engage with the platform more by showing them stuff that pisses them off. So they start typing really angry, nasty, offended, morally righteous messages at people that they don't know. People that they'd probably get along with face to face, but who online, grrr, hate you. Alrighty. Zev says, Oswald says, Zev Zelenko is an Orthodox Jewish MD whose COVID treatment was used successfully by President Bolsonaro, and his criticism of the American pandemic response is being silenced. More Athens versus Jerusalem. Being Athens, ironically. Oh, him being Athens, ironically. So there was a hearing before Congress, and the hearing was not about vaccines. It was not about whether or not people should take vaccines. It was whether or not early treatment for mildly symptomatic COVID-19 involving vitamin C, vitamin D, ivermectin, and a couple other things. Some doctors say it's effective, but officially, according to the CDC, according to the federal government, there is no mild symptomatic early protocol. There's no treatment until somebody is desperate and then they have to be hospitalized and put on a ventilator. There's seemingly no middle ground. And so various doctors had come to DC to give testimony about this. And the New York Times front ran them and tried to discredit the whole thing, repeatedly calling them, not using the phrase anti-vaxxer, but saying, something, using words that brought that phrase to mind, that these people were critical of vaccine use. It's like, this wasn't about vaccine at all. It was about, whether there are other things you can do to treat COVID-19 early on when it's not that serious. And for some reason, that's really offensive and scary to the New York Times. I don't get it. People say, I don't get it. And I think 9 times out of 10, what they mean is, I don't want to get it. I don't want to inhabit that headspace, and I haven't really tried. The phrase, I don't get it, to me implies that, an effort has been made, that somebody tried to understand and just couldn't. But I think most of the time, and this is true of me just now, I just recognize that as the enemy's viewpoint, and I don't want to inhabit it, which I think is unhelpful. It's maladaptive, saying, oh, that belief is something that somebody I don't like believes, therefore I must think it's wrong. I recognize that is a silly way to operate, but I catch myself doing it anyway. Alrighty, so Ben Rubber, have you tried to log into the Zoom call? Let's see. Doesn't matter how many times I scroll to the left over here on this computer, the cursor never jumps the gap to the other computer. So, hey, Parker's here, but I don't hear him. Parker, are you speaking? Is there a volume control on this computer that I need to activate? Great Lakes Traveler, dope setup, KMO. We're working the kinks out, but yeah, visually it's working. There it is. Hey, there's Parker. I hear you. Say more.
Okay, I had to mute you there. Okay,
all right.
I can hear you.
Oswald says, what did you do with Colin's body, KMO? Colin is right through that window. He's running the control board in there, so he is present but not speaking. And I don't do anything with Colin's body. It's all his responsibility. All right, and it looks like Benarubber's on the line as well. Connecting.
So this is working. So that's a test proof of concept.
Indeed. Indeed. Now, since I had nothing to prepare, I had prepared nothing. I had nothing to say, nothing at the ready. Oswald says, hi, Colin. Colin does not look up from his phone. Okay. Oh, there he is. Oh, he's chatting. He's in the YouTube chat on his phone. Okay. I what's the word I'm looking for? I besmirched Colin. Ben Rubber, you're muted.
Hey.
Hey. All right. So is this an improvement over the just watching me draw or not draw?
Totally, a big turnaround. We can turn the gears in your brain and maybe turn the gears in ours as well.
Yep. And I will never say in this setup, okay, I got to stop getting distracted. I got to draw.
Well, the response is fast in this situation. Unlike when you're drawing, you might not look at the chat for a while.
Yeah, true that. But you guys have each other to keep yourselves company.
I'm dressing my daughter, and then it's time for her dinner, so I'll be like in and out, and then alert. If that's something smart to say, we will say.
Well, thank you for helping test the setup. I appreciate it. And Paul is joining us.
I have a subject if you want.
Let's hear it.
I was wondering, I recently read a piece in the New Yorker called Last Exit from Afghanistan. And I was wondering if you thought that we should just get out of there completely and basically hand it over to the Taliban, or if we should stay in some capacity and try and have the more liberal government that's there now to remain in power.
Well, if that government cannot remain in power without the armed force of the United States keeping their rivals at bay, is it a legitimate government?
I don't know, but
All right.
that was, what was that?
That was somebody named Paul.
My fucking mom is fucking texting me.
All right. See you later, Paul. That was.
That's a troll.
Let's see. Paul is gone. I thought that might be Paul in Texas, but that was clearly not.
That was a troll.
That was a troll. Was that a member of the 50 Cent Army? Was that a CCP agent, or was that just some kid?
That was just some kid.
That's what I'm thinking.
Saying.
Yeah, I think so too. All right.
Nothing like using those swear words you learned on the bus.
Well, I used a swear word earlier. It's all good. So,
How's that go?
Oswald.
Is there, there's some more rules because it's on the radio, right?
Say again?
There's more rules because it's on the radio, right?
No, we're not on the radio. We're on like community access public or TV, not PBS, but cable.
Neat.
Yeah, local cable. We can curse. It's all good. Alrighty, Oswald says, Paul Kingsnorth just did an interview titled Science Can Never Replace the Mythic on a show featuring a lot of outspoken pandemic critics, including Peter Hitchens. who was published and disowned by Zero Books. Hey, Ben Rubber, would you mute again? Or I'll get you.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Those are kid noises we can live with. So Paul Kingsnorth, yeah, he just converted to Christianity, and not just any Christianity, to like Romanian Orthodox Christianity, which they have, they have a congregation in Ireland. Do I have a comment on this notion that science can never replace the mythic? I don't know about never, but scientists, they're not neurotypical. They don't relate as easily as, say, stand-up comedians do to the general populace, and communicating their worldview has never really been their specialty. I mean, they do it very well in communicating it to each other, but communicating the scientific worldview to non-scientists has never been a strength of the scientific community, with rare exceptions. So what's the question? Can science ever replace like the psychological and emotional satisfaction of mythic narratives? Maybe it could, but I was a member of a deliberately, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but a deliberately scientifically designed religion intended to replace superstition and whatnot with a scientific worldview. It didn't get very far. That was in the 90s. Let's see. I'm sure he would agree with John Michael Greer's claim that the pandemic is a perfect illustration of Jung's collective psychosis. Wrong copy-paste, lol. Hey, and it's Mushroom Mike from Mexico saying hello to all. What is up with this setup? Looks great. Saludos from Mexico to all my family of Vermontians. I think we're called Vermonters, but I'm not sure. And I'm sure I haven't lived here long enough to say, to refer to Vermonters with the collective pronoun we. I'm still a Flatlander and always will be. Alrighty.
Vermonters like Mainers. Do all the New England states have the ers? New Hampshireers, Massachusettsers.
I think it's Massachusetts. Massachusetts. I don't know. Massachusetts. Massachusetts. Not sure.
I like Massachusetts.
Yeah. Now I think Connecticut would be Connecticans. Connecticans sounds right to me. I've never lived in Connecticut, so I claim no right to an opinion about that. Oswald says, hey Michael, I heard a lot of Mexican towns are declining the vaccines. I had not heard that. Hikane says, New Hampshireites, massholes. New Jerseyans. New Jersey's not New England, though. I mean, New Jersey is just it's a bedroom suburb of New York for the most part. All righty. I think we're caught up in the chat. Anything anybody wants me to rant on? Colin, what's the time? I mean, I know the time is 6:17 p.m. Eastern, but when do I need to quit? Okay, we got 10 minutes. All righty. On. So clearly some Zoom control mastering will be required.
What's really fancy about your streaming setup is you have another person that is like on the controls at the other side, and it's not just you. That is rare.
Yeah. I mean, that is the advantage of living not only in a village with a community TV station, but it's in the same parking lot as my apartment building. And my gym, until it closed, was also not only in this building, but in this same hallway, like a 30-second walk from the TV station. But it has fallen prey to COVID and is out of business.
Does Mushroom Mike live in that town in Mexico that is famous for the mushroom? I just watched a show on that on Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia.
Mm-hmm.
He had an episode on that town.
What town is that? That's
I don't remember, but I think it's very close to the place where I saw them go caving at too.
Mushroom Mike says that that town is known for UFO sightings. So it's, I think, about 90 minutes south by car or by bus from Mexico City.
Yeah, a little bit south of
Hmm.
there is yes. It was in the right area.
And there's a Mayan ruin at the top of a nearby mountain. I watched videos on it a couple days ago, and the name of the town is escaping me here. Let me go to Google Maps and we'll find it real quick. Or if Mike, hey, Mike is still in the chat. He says, "Love Hamilton's UFO sightings because of high mushroom consumption." Mike, what's the name of the town again, where you're living? He'll put that in the chat in a second. I won't go looking on Google Maps. We're looking to get a setup where I can look at stuff online and you guys will see that, and Colin will switch back and forth, between web browser view and the view of me. So Tepoztlan is the name of the town, and it's the state of Mexico, or Mexico. So Tepoztlan is Tepoztlan. Love those ZTL combinations. Like too many consonants, not enough verbs, not enough vowels.
KMO, have you been watching specific Mexico-based expat channels that you are excited about?
Excited about? I mean, I find them useful. There's one called Tangerine Travels, and it's a couple, and they've been traveling continuously in Mexico for like the last 4 years. And they're not a huge channel, but they make enough from AdSense revenue to keep it going. So they're just, constantly going from place to place. And I find their videos very informative. So I'm appreciative of their efforts. There are other people I've watched, and the names of their channels are not coming to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, apologies to those folks, but shout out to Tangerine Travels. And I'm shocked. Ed the Willing, Ed in Montreal. I so expected him to be here. I guess it slipped his mind.
Well, there's channels that are like you. That's very informative, but then there's other channels where you're like, I like these people, and whatever they do, I am now interested in, what they put out.
So I've been watching, it's over now, but I watched all of WandaVision, the MCU show on the Disney Channel or on Disney Plus. And I could take it or leave it. I mean, it wouldn't have killed me to not watch it. But I tend to watch everything that EA Voss or Eric Voss of New Rockstars watches, because I like to watch his after action report videos, his reaction and his deconstruction recap videos. But I did cancel Disney Plus over the whole Gina Carano thing, so I've got a couple weeks left on it. I think I'll get to see the first episode of Winter Soldier, Falcon and Winter Soldier, but thereafter I'm done with Disney. Until they do something about the whole Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni faction versus the Kathleen Kennedy faction at Lucasfilm. Until that's resolved, I think I'm done. But my resolve may waver when the new animated show comes out, The Bad Batch. Is it The Bad Batch? I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, I've had a tendency to bounce around to, like, I'll almost obsess about one person's content or one author and just find all their stuff on YouTube and gobble it all up. I don't know how much of that is like the antisocialness that's inherent in being this into technology for interaction of my generation of like millennial anyway. Just rely on like finding that remote connection with someone.
I did that, with books, even before there was the internet.
Oh yeah, books for sure. With TV shows, like if I watch WandaVision, it's usually like 20 minutes, half an hour, maybe 40 minutes. It's not a full hour show. And then I'll watch 2 hours worth of breakdowns and commentary and Easter eggs. And it's like, wow, I'm very, very familiar with this show that I just watched. A show which is unremarkable and which otherwise I might have forgotten the details of. My two favorite shows right now, my favorite comedy is Resident Alien on Sci-Fi. And my favorite drama is Snowpiercer. And that's on TNT.
I caught up on Snowpiercer on your recommendation.
Oh, right on. I don't watch any commentary for either of those shows. Well, hey, everybody. I think we are pushing up against the time limit here. I think this is going to be the time. This is going to be the time frame, though. It's going to be 5:30 to 6:30 on Wednesday evenings. And it looks like Michael has showed up just at the very end here. So, Michael, if you want to, you can jump in, unmute yourself, and say hey. But then we're wrapping up.
I just wanted to say sorry about earlier.
Oh, weird. You came up as Paul earlier, and then Michael. Well, whoever you are, Michael, Paul, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. All right, I think that's it. So we're going to kill the stream, but we're going to do it again next week, and I'll be back drawing from 2 to 5 tomorrow.